I love that. No. I love that.
Who knew?
So it's the time for prayer. I always think, you know, that goes along with technology.
Yes.
Good. Thanks for trying that.
We'll get it figured out. It'll work. You guys can move up a little bit if you want. I know you're comfy cozy probably with your laptops out, but you can move forward if you want to. Everybody's had lunch and caffeine. It's a nice cozy room. Ready for a nap, huh? Okay, well I'm going to go ahead and get started because I want to get through some information. I actually have a live Google Hangout scheduled with some connections that I've actually made through Twitter, and we're going to demo a Google Hangout, and they're all not just, so you won't be able to hear just what I would use Google Hangouts for and the potential, but I have 4 other people that are going to join me and share how they have different roles, and they're going to share how they use Google Hangouts. So my name is Heather Callihan. I'm the Technology Integrationist with Northwest Public Schools, and that's in Grand Island, Nebraska. Not Grand Island Public, we're Northwest, we're kind of the rural school out there. I work with a high school building, 912, and then we have 4 K-8s. And prior to, this is my 2nd year as Technology Integrationist, and my background before that, I actually taught 1st grade in Bellevue for 6 years, and during that time got my master's degree in instructional tech. And so after that I moved to Grand Island, which is actually my hometown, and I taught middle school tech and was a land manager at one of the K-8 schools that I now do tech integration for. That's part of the entire district. So I love that I can share this information with you as future teachers, but what I love more is that I can share some experiences that I would have had using technology in the classroom because I'm not too far drawn from the classroom myself. What I want to share with you today is Google Hangouts and the potential that they can have in your classroom. And you've probably heard a lot of the push for technology, and technology expands your classroom walls, and using technology to connect your kids with the outside world. And Google Plus or Google Hangouts is just one avenue that you can use. Prior to using Google Hangouts, I used Skype as a way to connect my students with other people, not on a regular basis, but anytime I had opportunities. But what I'm going to talk to you about today is that Google Hangouts in combination with Google Plus has allowed me many more connections to other teachers, other classrooms, and other possibilities that I've been able to share with other teachers in my district and get them connected. And I have some examples of some things that I have done to get them connected. So let's think about, why would you want to do a Hangout? Basically, a Google Hangout is like a video conference call. You have live video and live audio. You can share screens, which is what we're doing right now. This session is actually a live Google Hangout. So there are people at home that can tune in live on their Google Plus account and watch my screen and watch what's going on in this presentation. So it is a way to expand your walls. Virtual field trips. I'm going to show you later on in this some communities that you can join in Google Plus. Google Plus is a key piece to Google Hangouts. You have to be in Google Plus to get to the Hangout. And if you have a Google Hangout, you automatically have Google Plus. Okay? So we'll talk about that. I saved the how to get involved to the very end to make sure that I could get to the meat of why. And then after you understand why you can use it or how you can use Google Hangouts, then I can move you through some steps on how to get connected and how to get there. So basically, expanding your classroom walls, communicating with the world. One of our teachers' favorite things to do is do mystery Hangouts. Has anybody heard of mystery Hangout or mystery Skype? Basically what happens is I send out a Twitter message or a message on Google Plus to the people and can say, I have a 4th grade teacher and a classroom looking to connect with a classroom on a mystery Hangout or mystery Skype. Basically what happens is that person will email me back and say, I have a 3rd grade or a 5th grade classroom, I'm interested. We set up a time and we connect. So maybe it would be tomorrow at 10 o'clock and we connect. Prior to that, the teacher assigns jobs. And all these jobs you can get off the internet. You just Google search Skype in the classroom. Basically, you've got students that are like your greeters that you read them on the video call. You've got students that are map readers. You've got students that use Google Earth. You've got students that ask the questions. You've got just a variety of different. You've got a photographer. So basically, what happens is you have a list of questions that you create. So one of the most popular questions after you greet the other school or the other place is, are you in the United States? And the questions have to be yes or no. So basically, it's a process of elimination, and it's a critical thinking process, because one of the examples I had is I had kids that were so in tune, a classroom that was on like their 4th or 5th mystery Skype, and their first question is always, are you east or west of the Mississippi? Okay? Always. Well, we happened to connect one day with a group that was from Canada, and so the answers were coming back very interesting. And so it wasn't until 3 questions in that the students finally looked at their pool of questions and said, maybe we should ask if you are in the United States. And then when they said no, it like changed everything in the classroom. And the teacher did a phenomenal job of not guiding the students in one direction or the other. They let them problem solve together. And that's the beauty of a mystery Skype or Google Hangout, is you guide them with the questions that they could possibly ask to help narrow down where the school is at, whether you border an ocean, yes or no. Do you have one of my favorites is, do you have 2 time zones in your state? You know, that's one that, and the kids gain these, they add to their question pool based on the questions that they were being asked themselves. And so it was really phenomenal that day when they waited till 3 questions in to ask if they were in the United States, because it changed the way the kids were thinking. But the teacher didn't do anything. He just basically watched the process and watched the kids work together, the different jobs that were going on, because you're evaluating those. It's not like a specific order to ask the questions. It's based on the answers. So that's called a mystery hangout. And all this information that I'm presenting is, I'll show you the link to the presentation, because I have screenshots of how to do certain things. And if you want to reference them later, remind me at the end. I'll give you the web address for this presentation, and then you have screenshots. So if you don't get to some part of it, if you don't have your laptop, you at least have the screenshots to reference later. Another big piece with Hangouts is the professional development piece. And I know Christina referenced this in her presentation this morning. She talked about where do we go to get professional development, especially with technology, because sometimes our districts aren't offering enough professional development in technology for the needs that we have. And so one of the things that I use Google Plus for in Google Hangouts is to hang out with other people that have similar passions and want to learn more about technology and education. So with a group of people that are tech integrationists, or I will schedule it for a group of 4th grade teachers so they can collaborate together and get some background knowledge. Actually, in our district, our feeder schools are very spread out. They could be between 20 minutes and a half hour away from each other. And on Wednesdays, we bring all of our 4th grade teachers, all of our elementary teachers together to do their PLCs and combine and compare data as grade levels. And we do that on Wednesdays, 2 Wednesdays a month. Well, recently they increased it to 3 Wednesdays a month, and one of those is via Google Hangout. Actually, you have all of our 4th grade teachers, all of our kindergarten teachers, all of our 1st grade teachers all combined in separate Google Hangouts so that they can collaborate together on Wednesdays when we dismiss at 2 o'clock. So that's the professional development piece. It can be within your district, or it can be outside of your district with other people that may be in your subject or grade level. 2-way conversations. Sometimes if I just need to converse with someone and ask them a question, it's nice to be able to see them face to face. So I will just say, hey, do you have a quick minute to do a Google Hangout so I can talk to you about this new Google Classroom thing? So sometimes it's helpful to avoid the email dance if you can just connect with them real quick and have that conversation. Oh no, I better get my battery out, or my power cord out. And then live shows for talks and broadcasts, and I have an example of a live show. I collaborate with Josh Ellen from Papillion La Vista, and he is now a teacher in Iowa. What's the closest right here? Okay. He's now a tech integrationist in Iowa. And so what we had done a couple weeks ago, both of our schools were new to Google Classroom. So we actually did what they're doing right here, a live hangout on air, and it was recorded for later playback. So we both collaborated on Google Classroom and created that live hangout on air. We both knew that the time frame that we did the hangout, teachers weren't able to watch because they were teaching, but allowed them the opportunity to go back and receive that professional development on their own when it was convenient for them. So if 4 o'clock doesn't work because you're a coach, to watch a video or to receive professional development because you're coaching. If 7 o'clock doesn't work for you because you have to drop off at daycare and you can't drop off till 7:30, which is like my situation, then maybe you need to watch the Google Hangout and receive your professional development at 9 o'clock at night when the house is calm or you're back from a volleyball game or whatever. So those Professional development opportunities for the live talks and live broadcasts are awesome. And then you, like I said, the very bottom one there says you can broadcast and then you can archive them, which is what I'm talking about putting them, hosting them on YouTube and putting them on Google Plus for later playback. Okay? So what I want to share with you here, if you have your laptops out and you're on Google Plus, otherwise you can revert back to this. But I wanted to share with you 2 Google communities that I would recommend you join if you're looking for those connections. If you want to create those opportunities for those mystery hangouts, I've had 2nd grade classrooms do mystery hangouts. I've had 3rd grade, 4th grade, and middle school. And how I got to them, I would post them on Twitter. And if you don't have enough Twitter followers or people, then and you hashtag mystery Skype, you can get it. But if not, if you are on Google Plus and you join the Connected Classrooms Workshop community, it looks just like that. The other one is a friend of mine is the Google Plus Edu Hangout one right there. Those are the 2 communities. Those are my go-to places. And in my position, like the other day, I had a teacher that said I'm interested in doing a Google Hangout, so I just posted it for them. And then when people respond, then I tag them in the post. I tag their Google Plus account in the post to get those set up. So those are the 2 communities when you're looking at a place to go to get that information. I would strongly suggest joining those. There's communities for everything, but that's all part of Google Plus. So in addition to just joining your Google Plus account and using them for Hangouts, the community section also has lots of opportunities in there. I mean, and there's virtual field trip opportunities through zoos, Weather Underground, which I have an example, and plenty of other things that are in there, and you'll see because it just constantly changes. I won't show you this whole Google Hangout here, but this is a video that I took. Basically, I connected through that Connected Classrooms workshop, and I saw an opportunity for a virtual field trip or a hangout on air with Weather Underground, and a Weather Underground meteorologist gave a live Google Hangout weather forecast for Christmas. It was called the Reindeer Weather Forecast or something. So I used that. I connected with this Reindeer or this Weather Underground on. It was through Connected Classrooms, and I set it up and connected with a 2nd grade teacher in our district. So we did this live hangout, and I'll show you part of the video here. Hopefully our audio works.
Winter forecast specifically for Christmas Eve when Santa's sleigh will be distributed all across the world. It is Dr. Jeff Masters. I've been a meteorologist 30 years here for a weather web company called Weather Underground. And just a second here, I'm going to take a forecast call to see what the latest is. Hello.
The kids were so excited to connect with the weatherman to tell them what the forecast is going to be for the reindeer on Christmas Eve.
Okay, we're going to start over because meteorologists doesn't have training in Google Plus so much, but here we are. Winter's on its way. In fact, winter's already here. I'm in Michigan. Ann Arbor, Michigan. We've got about 8 inches of snow on the ground.
So then it was cool afterwards to talk about where Ann Arbor, Michigan was, something that was just a learning opportunity on the spot that maybe it wasn't a topic for the day, but it was a great opportunity to look at a map and pull that up.
So, my introduction, I'm Dr. Jeff Masters, Chief Meteorologist for WeatherUnderground.com, or the Internet weather website. We use all the latest weather information from computers and satellites to weather forecasts for the entire world. But we also look at some of our animal friends for forecast help. And any kids out there, any idea what kind of animals we might use to make a good weather forecast?
Okay, so anyway, he goes on and talks to the kids. The kids ask questions back and forth. We just had the kids come up to the laptop computer so they could be seen on the camera. But that took about, it was about 10 minutes, 12 minutes out of the day in the morning for them to do that. And like I said, it was a simple connection through that Connected Classrooms community on Google Plus that we were able to tap into that. Here is a quick one. This was a mystery Skype session. Obviously, the one I just showed you did not take a lot of prep. That was more teacher prep and then just prepping students for the idea of just sitting in front of the computer and asking those types of questions. Now, the Google mystery Skype had a little bit more prep because each student had a job. And you can just kind of see what all the kids are doing here. And you can hear just a little bit of how they're walking up to the computer and asking questions. Luckily, they had done it before, so connecting So that kid is asking the questions, standing in front of the camera. But the team off to the side of him is the team that's helping him decide which questions to ask based on the answers. You'll see kids laying on the floor looking at maps and crossing off things as they narrow down which parts of the United States it would not be. Google Earth on the iPad. Lots of collaboration, very engaged. Very good question. In that video, just in case you're interested, that video was just done on Animoto. I just took some pictures and some video and compiled that all together in Animoto. And we actually shared that on our school website. So that's a phenomenal way. A couple of things on the Mystery Hangout that we've added since then. A United States puzzle. One of the teachers that I work with had a United States puzzle, and they used that in the Mystery Hangout. So as you narrow down things, they were pulling pieces out of the puzzle. And to me, that was like that was like hands down the best tool. So I started sharing that with other teachers. They were going to garage sales looking for puzzles as a tool. You know, you think technology is the best tool for things like that. To me, the puzzle was the big win in that one for the Google Hangout. And the other thing that we've added since we've done is signs. So when your kids are thinking and trying to figure things out and they need more time, we have signs that students will come up and hold that say "still thinking," or one that'll say "your turn," "your turn," "our turn," because sometimes you get so wrapped up in it and you wait long and you can't you lose track of whose turn it is, and that happens because you're just so involved in the process. So we've added signs that say "still thinking," "your turn," "our turn," "thank you" is one. And then the puzzle. The puzzle is the other thing that we've added since then. And we just kind of share that around the district so people have those resources. And I can, you know, after this is over, if you want the information that I send to teachers with all the jobs, because there's a list of them that you can actually just like print out, and we glued them onto note cards and shared them with kids. On the one side it has the job name, and on the back it has the description. Eventually they got to the point where they didn't need the job cards because people understood the jobs, but I can send you all that information as well. A live broadcast show, and I have an example here, but I don't need to show you the live broadcast show example because it's right here. This is the live where we're doing exactly that right here. This is live on air. This is a Google Hangout on air that people can watch. It's a live public feed. Because I'm sharing my screen on this Google Hangout, they're actually seeing all of this. Okay, I believe they're seeing, I don't know if they're seeing my face or not, but they hear because of the sound, they do. Okay, see they have all the cool technology set up to make it better. A normal live on air hangout, it's the screen of my computer only, and then my face in the corner. So when I share my screen. So that's basically, I don't need to show you this, but that's the same thing we did at Ed Camp Omaha that Christina was talking about. We had some sessions that were a live broadcast. And then sharing screens. I did a live hangout. I mentioned this earlier. I did a live hangout with Josh, and I'll kind of show you a quick demo of that and how that worked because we shared a presentation. And then he talked and we collaborated back and forth. So I'll show you a couple of minutes of that. And this is how you can use it for professional development.
All right, welcome to the first LC Titan Hangout. This is a hangout on air. Hopefully, I'll be doing these about once a month. We'll get
this is probably one of the longest hangouts I was ever in. It was very nerve-wracking because I kept thinking, what happens if something messes up because you can't start over a 40-minute
future ones on there. There is a special guest in the room. Heather, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Heather Callihan with Northwest Public Schools in Grand Island, Nebraska. So I'm happy to be joining Josh today for this first hangout.
So the person that's doing the talking is going to be featured on the main part of the screen, and then everyone else in the hangout is going to be at the bottom part of the screen.
Absolutely. You know, that's kind of with Hangouts on Air, we just want to touch base a little bit about certain things. And one thing that's been really
so people could watch this while we were doing this, but then it was recorded and posted on our website, so they could watch it afterwards. So I'm going to fast forward just a little bit. So now it's the screen share. So now it's the slide presentation that we put together that we're talking through on here.
You don't have to recreate the wheel. There's a Google Resources tab there, and then there's a Google Classroom one. One thing that...
So what we had done in this presentation was at the very beginning, at the end, not only could a viewer watch it after the fact, but we also had our resources there, so this slide presentation was also accessible after the fact as well. So talk about on-demand professional learning or on-demand learning, and then collaborating with other people and sharing your resources out. That's kind of how that worked. Have any of you ever done a Google Hangout? Yourselves or anything? Okay. So I'm going to go through just some basics here really quick, and then we're going to connect and actually we're going to try to do this. This is going to be interesting because we're actually doing a Hangout within a Hangout, because I have scheduled a Hangout with some people that I connect with, and so we're going to try using Google's Incognito window.
Can I ask you a question before you go in?
Yeah.
So how would you think that this would compare with Montage Live?
I'm not familiar with Montage
That's
Live.
a state product.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with that, so I'm not sure. I don't know. The biggest thing with Google Plus and the Hangouts here is that I have all my connections because of so many people that are on Google Plus also in education. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it depends. I don't know if the connections are there. If all the people that I would want to connect with are on that site, then yes, it would be similar. But if not, I would want to go where everyone else is. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So basically, the basics. You're basically turning a conversation into a video call. Up to 10 people can actively participate, except if you're a Google Apps school, it's 15. You can have up to 15 people. And you can use it, it can work on computers, Android, and Apple devices. I always suggest doing Hangouts on a laptop, but I always get people that do use them on an iPad. And so in this situation, when I'm sharing screens, I need to be on a laptop. But if you are just viewing a Google Hangout, you can do it on your iPad. And you basically can share your camera or mute your microphone, things like that. So you can do the basics on an iPad. It's just that if you want to share screens like I'm doing right here, or use the Google Toolbox, then you need to be on a computer. Okay? So I'll go through the getting started and that kind of stuff when you here as soon as we're done doing this Hangout, and then I can get you all going and get you joining some of those communities to help you find ways to utilize Hangouts. So, where did my Incognito window go? Yeah. Any other questions while we're getting set up with a Google Hangout within a Google Hangout? So I basically just picked 3 people that were in my Google Plus my Google Plus friends. Oh, there's Otis. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, Josh? It was you and Josh. Who were my other people? Laura, I invited Laura. Wasn't there one more?
I can't remember.
Josh? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, who else? Am I missing anybody? I invited Laura, you, Otis. Who was the other person? I can't remember.
Well, you're going to invite Mickey, she said.
Okay, yeah. Okay, this is really cool, guys. Before I get going, I'm actually doing a on-air hangout for this session. So I had to open an incognito window, so I'm doing like a hangout within a hangout.
Nice.
So that's like the coolest of the coolest tech stuff. I just wanted you to know.
Devin Schoening's the other one.
Yep, that's right. Okay, thank you. I'm going to call him right now. Okay. We have 8 people in. Oh, there's Laura.
She's kind of there.
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Josh.
Laura, I just told these guys we're like doing the coolest of the coolest techie things right now because the session that I'm doing right now is being broadcast on air. So I'm actually doing a Google Hangout within a Google Hangout.
Wow.
Via an incognito window.
Wow. Look at you go.
I know, who would have thought, right? The great tech guys here suggested it. So
That's awesome.
So here's proof. If
Glad
anyone,
you and not me.
yeah, it's proof that it works. So what we have here is I'm doing a session on Google Hangouts and the potential in education. In the room with me, I have 8 pre-service teachers, right? Pre-service, all of you? Pre-service teachers. So they're student teaching right now. Are you pre-service? What's your position? Yeah, sorry. Your what? Okay, library media coach. Otherwise, we have pre-service teachers that are student teaching. And so what we've talked about so far is just opening your classroom walls and how you're using Google Hangouts. I would like you to go ahead and introduce yourselves. Tell me how you use Google Hangouts, and then a little bit of how you promote them for use with others, depending on your role. So Laura, yours would be your teachers. Josh, you and Otis have a different role as far as how you promote them or use them. And then I want to open it up for questions that we might have with the group. Does that make sense? And then we'll catch, if Devin joins in, we'll catch him up to speed.
Who's going first? I apologize. They're hanging my name tag today. My name plate.
Well, since you're on the screen really big, Josh, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry about that. My name is Josh Allen. Obviously, I am new to my position because my nameplate is being hung up as we speak. I started this year as the Tech Integration Specialist for Lewis Central Community Schools, just south of Council Bluffs. It's a new position for the district. I held a similar role in the last 7 years in Billion. Also on the NITA board, President-elect Anita organized at Camp Omaha, which is March 21st. Everyone in there is invited to bring a friend. I think that's it. Next.
Otis, do you want to go ahead?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm Otis Pierce. I am the Technology Integration Coordinator at ESU 7 in Columbus. This is my 3rd year on the job up here. Previous to that, I was 13 years in the classroom out in Southern. I go and help teachers around the 7-county area integrate technology into the classroom, whether it be Google or iPads or whatever. I use Google Hangouts a lot to communicate with Josh and Heather and Laura. We are part of this first third Thursday PLC where we get together and just talk tech for about an hour from all across the state. So last week we were there, Louis Central, we had members from out in Shatter join that. So it just kind of opens everything up to getting out there and not having to travel. Devin is actually driving.
My.
And it just flattens it. It'll save travel time, especially for people in multi-building districts who need to collaborate, and that's kind of how I promote it to the teachers and the issue.
Google Hangouts are also mobile. So
apparently, John. Look at Devin go.
Hey, this isn't the first time I've done this. This is perfectly safe, I promise.
I feel like we're on the Weather Channel, like you're a storm chaser.
Let's see, it is gorgeous outside right now.
okay, I am Laura Kroll. I am the elementary principal at Exeter Milligan. This is my 4th year as the elementary principal, and we are actually between 2 sites. So part of my elementary is at Exeter, and the other part is at Milligan. And so we utilize Google Hangouts in a lot of different ways. Probably the biggest one is just being able to have staff meetings without everybody having to pick up. There's about 15 miles in between sites, and so that saves a lot of time being able to have Google Hangouts because we can have longer meetings and without having to wait for one group of teachers to travel to the other site. We've also utilized Hangouts when we're doing book studies. We have a common lunch time at both sites, and so for that reason, we've been able to have book studies over our lunch time and use Google Hangouts to do those book studies. Last year, during Read Across America, we actually had the high school kids use Google Hangouts to read to the elementary kids at the other site. So we've utilized Google Hangouts to do that kind of Read Across America. We also do mystery readers, and so we were trying to figure out, we have adults that come in our mystery readers, but some of the kids have expressed some interest in being a mystery reader for some of their younger elementary classes, so we're trying to figure out how we could do that without them taking too much class time, so we thought we could do that through a Google Hangout this year. So we're actually going to start doing some mystery reader type things using Google Hangouts. A lot of our professional development is through Google Hangouts because, like I said, we're at 2 different sites. So we'll do some professional development things that don't require us all to be at the same site. We'll do those over Google Hangouts. And thankful to have Josh introduce a little pre-NEVED chat. It's our Nebraska's educational Twitter chat. Josh does a little thing through Google Hangouts where he's introducing the moderator for that week and discussing the topic and kind of doing a little pre-chat, I guess, promotion. So lots of ways we use Google Hangouts.
Devin, welcome. You're up next. Basically what we have here is we have about 8 pre-service teachers in this session that I'm doing today. And so I'm sharing the love for Google Hangouts, the endless potential. And so we would love to hear your take on what you're using it for. And how convenient it is to do a Google Hangout on the go.
It is convenient. Yeah, I'm the K-12 Instructional Technology Program Lead in Council. A couple of things to add. I know one thing the board said, as I was listening, we do some of the same things. We have a couple of smaller elementary schools. They will use Google Hangouts for virtual PLCs. So that they don't have to travel to the other buildings to actually have their PLCs during the school day. And lots of those teachers at the smaller buildings might be single. There might only be one kindergarten teacher or something at that building. So we certainly use them for virtual PLCs. I'm part of the Iowa EdChat team. We use Hangouts to do once a month a live show. The last night we had on Murray, which was awesome. And so we use that, and it's a great way to be able to invite people in, to record it directly to YouTube, have access to all that stuff as we're working. So we use it that way. We also, try to use it as much as we can to give kids access to people. We've had 4th graders have conversations with teachers in Northern Ireland. We've had reading groups from different elementary schools kind of having a discussion about the same book. So we try and utilize it as much as we possibly can to just give access for our students and our teachers to experiences that they may not otherwise be able to have, either based on location or based on content. We try to make sure and provide as many of those opportunities as possible through a tool like this. Again, it's good on the go. I'm kind of on my way to another building. I'm meeting at 1:30 at a building, so it's great to have access to people as I'm moving.
Awesome. Devin, you need to know this too, because I think it's cool, but the session that I'm doing is broadcast through an on-air Hangout, and so I'm actually doing a Hangout within a Hangout. So you're on the road on a Hangout within a Hangout via an Incognito window.
Wow. That's like major kind of thing.
So if anybody ever asks if it can be done, it can be done.
Okay, that's good to know.
Do you guys have any questions about how we've got a couple tech integrationists, a ESU director of professional development, an administrator, elementary administrator. Do you have any other questions? How they're utilizing it? Some of the things I touched on, but most of those things they can truly give you an idea of how they're using Hangouts and their own experiences for what role they have in education. Nobody in the room has ever done a Google Hangout.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Except for the tech guys who live it.
This is actually not the first time I've been in a Hangout with Devin, and he's been on in a car. I have to say it's really not that bad. Both experiences.
That's right. I said earlier, this isn't the first time. I've certainly done this before. It seems to be getting better, easier every time.
Getting easier.
Finally, a band that can multitask.
I didn't. Yeah.
You have a question?
I won't go there. I was going to say something.
Okay, we have one question. I'll repeat it after she asks it.
So, I don't mean this is a good, but I was going to take more than elementary teacher talk and
Okay, that was a very good question. She said that since none of you are elementary ed teachers, how often do you collaborate with elementary teachers? Using Google Hangouts.
With Google Hangouts, it depends on if our school has it turned on their Google. All of our schools at ESU 7 do have a Google domain of their own that they control, but it's up to them if they turn that on for the teachers and the teachers actually use it.
That's a good point. I didn't mention that part of it, but it does have to be turned on.
Yeah, so I'd like to do more. I keep pushing it while I'm out there to schools, so hopefully more and more will come onto it. I'd love to do more, especially where travel is a main thing for me. Yes, I am centrally located, about how far the school is about an hour, but being able to save that hour travel time to and from for a 5-minute question, which can be easier over a Google Hangout, would be useful. I'd like to do more of it. Haven't yet because teachers don't know if it's turned on in their domain or not. And if it is turned on, they don't know about it and don't know how to set it up.
Well, speaking from an elementary standpoint, and like I said, because there are about 12 to 15 miles between sites, we have professional development every Friday at Exeter Milligan, and the road between the two sites is actually gravel, so I teach in rural Nebraska, and the roads are not always great, and so if you follow me on Twitter, I tweeted out a few pictures of my travel between sites, and so I'm assuming, and we did last year, we used Google Hangouts weekly because it saved that traveling between sites for teachers who have to get on that road isn't well traveled during bad weather days. So, weekly.
And I was there, like the 2 elementary schools, or 2 smaller ones, are using them for virtual PLCs. I went in and did some work with them to make sure they kind of saw how to do that. And they were using it through the calendar feature. So they weren't necessarily doing Hangouts on air. They would create calendar events and then just join through the calendar invite, which is a simple, super simple way to still connect and have them do that work. We also have it, we are 1-to-1 with these grades 3 through 5, expectations for teachers and kids in grades 3 through 5 for that elementary rollout. And one of the expectations in there was that students were going to have the opportunity to visit with an expert or collaborate with another classroom via a Google Hangouts or Skype at least once per year. So we're trying to build that into the experience for all of our kids. And to do that, what I've tried to do is model that for them. We had a group of early adopter teachers last year in grades 3 through 5. We tried to do a couple of hangouts with them just to let them see what it's all about. But we are trying to build that right into what we would expect the experiences to be like for our students and our teachers in grades 3 through 5.
Awesome.
I'll just throw in that we only have all of the teachers at each grade level are in the same building. So all teachers are in the same building, so we don't necessarily have the same needs as Otis and Laura and Deb have been mentioning. We have used Hangouts to have a first grader participate in upper level math. We have a K1 building and a 2.5 building, and so we used just a iPad at one building and an Nexus tablet at the other, so they can connect back and forth. That's a pretty quick way to do it.
Other questions, guys? Yes.
Okay, well, this is like, okay, so if I have like, I'm teaching second grade and I have like my second grade teachers at my school, how do I find like other second grade teachers like that I can talk to like on a Hangout? Like, is it through like email? You find an email?
Okay, I'll let you guys, can you hear the question?
Oh.
Okay, basically what she asked was, she's a second grade, she's student teaching in second grade, and she wants to know if she wants to communicate with other second grade teachers around the United States or around the world, how does she find those connections?
I'll go ahead. Okay, that's what I was going to say. I would, if you're not on Twitter already, which is really how the 5 of us have met, among other ways, but Twitter is a great place to go find like-minded teachers or the same subject area. If you're in second grade, I would suggest checking out the hashtag #SecondChat. You should be able to find a good handful of other second grade teachers there. They're always sharing out ideas, like Laura mentioned. I think she mentioned the global read aloud. You can find those second grade teachers that are interested in participating and using Google Hangouts that way. Or, and Otis mentioned, the twice a month that some of the tech integration people across Nebraska get together. We found all of those people through Twitter, and we just decided that we can't have good conversations in 140 characters. So that second chat hashtag, or if others in the room are in different subject areas or grade levels, you can find hashtags for all of those. And that's really ways to find people either across the state or across the nation or around the world, really, that you can have some of those conversations with.
I'll also throw in, it's EduHangouts. It's eduhangout.org. Is a way kind of to get that connection going, and also that maybe doing a mystery hangout that's similar to a mystery Skype, trying to figure out where in the country people are. So I think that would be another resource as well to use.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Maybe, Heather, you can help them get on Twitter if they're not on Twitter.
Yes, I think there was a session about that before this. There was like an open sectional promoting it, and Christina did a great job of promoting it in her keynote. I think we have another question.
It's my understanding some school districts that I know you can have them.
Right. Yes, Otis, I think you mentioned this before. The statement was made that there are some school districts that do not have Google Plus turned on in their Google domain account, and so she was just making that statement that there are, and then she mentioned that some people have their own personal Gmail accounts, and that is automatically turned on through your personal account. So that would kind of be a go-around if you needed to access it, if you couldn't access it through your Google Apps domain address.
We also got to be careful on a personal Google domain. It's you and 9 other people for a total of 10.
Right.
And on the education side, it's you and 14 other people for a total of 15. So there are some differences in there too, depending on how big and how spread out your districts are. So like Laura can have, on hers, it may just be 1 at each site, but she could have multiple, 8 at one site, 7 at another site set up through their Google domain and have 15 different screens showing from 15 different places as well.
Awesome. Very good point. Other questions, guys?
Yep.
Do you guys have any last-minute tips as far as Google Hangouts go, connecting with other classrooms, Google+? Those are just some kind of things. I talked a little bit about Google+. When I hang up here, we're going to go through some steps and kind of get people on board, maybe have a couple practice calling each other sessions in here if we have time, but that's kind of where we're going from here. Do you guys have any last-minute tips or any advice before we leave?
Yeah.
These are future educators. Go ahead.
You're practicing it yet, but I would always encourage people to give it a go first, because sometimes there are random things that come up and you think you're connecting and you're not, or you can't get somebody connected. So I would always try and plan ahead and do any practice that you have to, and practice with the planning hangouts too. Sometimes they're not just for the moment. Sometimes you have a best plan, and to make sure you understand how that's going to work, and the links that you can share from your Hangout if you want others to be able to view that on YouTube Live links. So if you're trying to share a music concert, for instance, with people who can't be there, just testing those things out, knowing where to find those links, giving it a shot before you actually have the event go live.
Another thing that I've used for teachers to kind of get on Google Plus in the schools to turn it on. I know Christina Peters talked about blended learning this morning in the keynote, who's following along on Twitter, of course. Is with the Hangouts on air, you can be the only person in a Hangout on air and be recording your screen and then save it to YouTube, so it's almost presenting that flipped blended lesson to your class. You have that video for if you're homesick, if you have your kids homesick. That way the lesson still goes on with you as the teacher. It's a video that kids can play and even can go back to and watch if they're not understanding something as well. So it doesn't have to be a hangout with people. It can be just a hangout with yourself, and then sharing that screen and then have it recorded and save it future use.
Good. I didn't mention anything about that. That was a good thing to add.
I'd also, going back to where do you find people, your ESUs may be a resource for that as well, especially if you're in a smaller school. I know that ESU 3 in the past had done some collaborating among districts, so that may be another resource to find other teachers in your secondary or grade level.
Very good. Well, thank you guys very much for your time. It's always nice to connect with people that are utilizing the tool that you're trying to promote and teach. So I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to share this with these pre-service teachers here at TechEdge.
No problem.
No problem. No problem.
Okay, drive safely, Devin.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm good. Thanks, guys.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so that was a Hangout on Air. A couple of things about that. Did you guys see the little, some of them had the name boxes underneath with their names on it? There's a toolbar in there called the Google Toolbox, and you can add that. And I was trying to add it in, but it was kind of, on a Google Hangout on Air, I was trying not to cover up my screen. But you can put in your information there, so if you're doing something that's more on a professional Hangout, then you've got your information there. So I'm going to go back to my presentation here and go through some how-tos and kind of answer some questions. How many of you have Google accounts through your school? Is it through your school or is it your personal? UNL? Is it personal? Okay. And you can utilize that, but like Otis said, one of the things is that you can only connect with 10 you post to 15. And sometimes that's not really a problem. It just depends how many you're going to have. You know, in some of my situations with the Hangouts I do with the tech people, those Thursday mornings when I connect, sometimes there are 15 or close to 15 people. And so if we run our personal accounts that had 10, then we'd have a problem. And it's the person starting the Hangout, initiating it that the limits apply to. So if you only have a personal account, but someone starting and initiating the Hangout is 15, I believe you'd be fine. Okay? So just some how-tos. To do a Google Hangout, the first thing you have to have is a Google Plus account. And that was the issue that we kind of brought up as far as Google Plus. If you're in a school, so if you guys are pre-service and you're using your Gmail accounts and you find purpose for Google Hangouts and then you end up working in a school that you get a school domain address and they don't have that turned on, then you need to do things, talk to the people to show the value of turning something like that on in your school. That would be and that is something that I know at the beginning when we started our Google Apps for Domain, we had that shut off, and it was immediately turned on, especially when we opened up the idea that our common level subject area teachers and our common grade level teachers were going to connect via Google Hangout on Wednesday afternoons when we dismiss at 2 o'clock to save the drive time. So basically, you need that Google Plus account, and like I said, if you have a Gmail account already, or if you have a Google account through your school, you just click on, and if you're not set up, see mine has the plus sign that says Heather on it. If you don't have your Google Plus set up, it'll just say you, Y-O-U, and when you click on that, it'll prompt you through setting that up to basically identify you, add the profile picture, and you can just put minimal information in there. It's just like any social media or any social account you create. There's just minimal stuff. You don't have to go through and answer every single question, put your exact school, put your bio. You can always go back to that stuff later. They just basically want you to identify yourself and do the minimal information so that you can have your connection. And you just want to make sure you get information out there so that people know who you are, okay? One of the tips, these are some tips, but the first one I'm going to tell you about is the profile picture thing, and this is where we ran into some issues in our district, was that, so I have a personal Gmail account, and I have my school, so I have Google Plus for both. Well, I'm also on the NITA board, and I also have a Google Plus account for them. So what was happening was I was trying to have these Google Hangouts with teachers from my school, but they were calling I was signed on with my Northwest account, my school account, but they were calling my Gmail account. So we were wasting 10 minutes of time because they're like, I'm calling you, you're not answering. Well, then I figured out that when they sign into their account, it pops up just like on Facebook or any other account, it pops up possible people that you might be interested in adding to your Google Plus account. Well, they were adding my personal account, and they were utilizing that. So what we told teachers to help identify which account so people know whether they're adding you to your personal account or adding you to your professional account. You know, sometimes it doesn't matter, but what we did to help identify our teachers who have both was have them put their school photo. So we emailed out the school photo that was taken to teachers and said use that as your profile picture for your school account, and then use another one for your other account. So they knew who to look for. So when I'm searching for a specific teacher and I type in their name, I know that that is their school photo because I know what the background looks like. So that was a suggestion we had for teachers to help them identify which one they were friending. Because what was happening is our non-techie teachers would friend somebody or accept them or go back and forth, and they'd have conversation with me later that's like, didn't that person add me on Google Plus? Yeah, they did add me on Google Plus. I keep getting these notifications. Well, it was because they had multiple accounts and they didn't quite get that sorted out. So that was one of the suggestions we had. Some tips for Hangouts. I think Josh had headphones in and Otis had headphones in. Obviously, Devin did not. But the more people you get in, the more potential you have for feedback. And so whenever I do a Google Hangout with more than just me and somebody else, I always use headphones. Just it helps with the sound and the quality. Another thing, and that was what I think Devin mentioned, is just testing your connection. So if you're going to do a Google Hangout for the first time and you plan this great thing, you made these connections through Twitter or through the Google Edu Hangout community or whatever, do plan a test connection with the person you'd like to connect with prior to that day. You know, it could be just a 2-minute thing right after school. Are you busy at 3:15? Can we just make a brief connection just to make sure everything works? Because it never fails when you have something great planned and you're very, very excited. It just seems like it never fails. Something's not going to work. Whether it's sound, whether it's your internet, something like that. So doing a test connection and make sure your wireless is working, make sure your video is working. Maybe you need to make sure that that your camera is working and the sound is working. I mentioned the Google Toolbox. And that's an awesome tool so that you can identify yourself if you want to put, Mrs. Callihan's second graders, if you're connecting to another class, those types of things. You can put your name and your school and your title. And then just to minimize distractions, this is out of my control, but when I did that Google Hangout with Josh and we live streamed it and then recorded it, I was in my office at school and we were in the Hangout for 40 minutes while there was bells ringing. And then it was at the end of the day and the secretary got on and did all the announcements. And so those are distractions that were kind of out of my control at the time. But if you're doing some sort of live Hangout or you're doing a Hangout, simply putting a sign on your classroom door, everybody puts signs when they're testing, do not disturb. Just in a video call, do not disturb. So I usually put a sign out on my door so people don't come in my office. I couldn't do anything except have somebody turn off the intercom, but anything you can do to minimize the distractions in those is pretty helpful. It kind of helps so that you're not distracted or taken away, especially if it's one of those live Hangouts on air. The Google Plus thing, you basically connect and start adding people to your circles. They don't have to be in your circles to connect with you. So if I wanted to connect with one of you, if I know your email address, if you're on Google Plus and I know your email address, I can connect with you. That's all you have to have. It's easier if you're in my circles because I can just check boxes like I was doing when I connected with those guys. I can just start typing their name and check boxes and it'll auto-populate for me. But creating circles is helpful. But for these guys here, they don't have me. They added me to create this Hangout on air, and all he asked me for was my email address, and it worked just fine. I'm not in their circles or anything. It was just through email address. So as long as you have that, you can make that connection, and it's Google Plus is what's necessary. A Google Plus account is the piece that you need, and the adding people to your circles just make it easier if you're going to connect with them on a regular basis. Okay? You can create circles however you want. You can create them and label them. Just like those of you that are on social media and you have groups on Facebook or you have groups that you set up for connecting. I have a group called GI Northwest and I have a group called PD. So all the teachers that I have in GINW are in a little circle, and then I have PD in a circle, and then I've got some people that I connect with on NETA that I have in a circle. So those are just personal preference, and again, they're just helpful. The circles are helpful if you're going to connect with people after. Okay? People always say to me, and you guys are young, so you understand social media a little better than some of the sessions that I do with teachers that have been in the field for so long. But sometimes the question comes up, is Google Plus just another social media piece? They're like, I already use Facebook, I have enough, I use Instagram, I don't want another thing to remember. So what I suggest for people is use your Google Plus account for your professional connections. Use it kind of like a professional use where you're posting things that you've done in your classroom. You say, my students did this great project, here's the YouTube link to the video that we created, or here's a site for tips on using Google Classroom. Here's a great resource that I got from the TechEdge conference. So that's what I suggest to teachers. Just use your Google Plus to post the great things that you're doing in your classroom, the great things you're doing as a professional, the great things that you're learning, and connect with people that are utilizing Google in the same fashion. So obviously, you get people, for my Google Plus, the people that I add to my Google Plus are people that were on that Hangout, and other people that do the same types of thing that I do, teachers that I connect with, that type of thing. And I do get teachers or people that I know that say they found me on Google Plus and they'll add me, but if they're not in my circles, then they're not going to see anything I post anyway. Does that make sense? If I don't put them in, because you post who you want to post to. So if I post that I did this Google Hangout, I can pick which circles I want to see that. So I just tell teachers that, use it for professional use. It's not another password or another thing you have to remember because it's connected to your Google Apps domain. And most of the teachers in my building check their email anyway or log on to that on a daily basis, so you're already logged into Google Plus anyway. So it's not like an extra step. It's just an extra tab to go to. Okay? Adding a Hangout and all these things, I'm going to go through this last part a little quickly because I want you to be able to try it yourself, and I want to be able to troubleshoot and help you if you have questions to setting up your Google Plus account and maybe starting a sample Hangout in the room. All of these are on my presentation, so these screenshots are there if you need to go back and look at it. But the Hangouts are on the right, but on the left where you click on Home, that's where you can do the Hangout on air. and start that. And that's basically what I did. If it's not a Hangout on air, it's not broadcast, you can just do a regular Hangout. So last night I needed to do a test Hangout to make sure all my stuff was working. I just connected with another teacher friend in Cozad. I just did the one on the right-hand side, just a quick Hangout. Nobody could see it. It wasn't recorded. You couldn't go back and find it. It was just a brief conversation, 2 minutes, and I was done. Hangouts on air just give you the potential to view it. This is kind of how you start the Hangout on air, and you can add people and who you want to be in your audience based on your circles or your Google Plus account. I already gave this sample Hangout on air earlier that I did with Josh. The guys in our Hangout kind of mentioned this right here. You can add 10 participants or 15 if you're a Google Apps school. You can select from your list. This is what I mean how they'll populate. So like when these guys over here added me today, I wasn't going to populate in their list because I wasn't in their plus. I wasn't on their circles. But because these guys are in my circles, if I wanted to start a Google Hangout with them, I can just check the boxes. And all of them, when I hit go, they would all be invited to that Google Hangout. Okay? You've got the toolbars. These are some things we didn't use in a Hangout. We can share screens, which is what we're doing right now. So not only can you see the people, but you can also, if you want to share screens. So if somebody's doing a demo, you can share the screen with them. And then I talked about the Google Toolbox allows you to add those features at the bottom to identify who you are, to have that banner run across. Use on a regular basis in a Google Hangout is Google Drive, because I like to share documents. So I will use Google Drive to start like a collaborative Word document. So as we're hanging out, I can collaborate and take notes over what we're discussing. So that's nice for students too. If you were doing some sort of Hangout or something, you could have one student in charge of that note-taking piece too. And what happens is when you're if I start the Google Drive document, as long as everybody in the Hangout writes on it or types something on it, they all have access to it when it's over. And that's something we kind of learned the hard way. I was collaborating with 4 or 5 people, and we were all in the same document, and we hung up, and one of them emailed me and said, I don't have access to it. And what we figured out was as long as you type on the document one time, whether it's just a letter or a number, didn't have to be a long drawn-out thing, you had access to that collaborative document at the end by default from that Google Hangout. So that's kind of a cool feature too. Okay? And then at the end, I have some resources here. How to learn more, some different step-by-step, some resources directly from Google and Google Sites. And then there's a link to Brent Catlett's Edgy Hangout resource there. So I'm going to go back here and go back to my link to my presentation. I actually combined both of mine into one and share that with you so that you can all have that to access screenshots of Google Plus and the stuff that we just did. It's http://bit.ly/UNL-TechEdge. And just a plug there for Bitly. That will promote the Google URL shortener, which I've always loved. Bitly to me is like my new go-to, simply because after the ly, the slash, you can customize the remaining piece of that URL. So if you need to give students a URL address, it never fails that they're going to miss something. They're going to mistake a 1 for an L or an I, and it's just going to be a disaster, and then 15 minutes later they're still on the website. You can use the Bitly URL shortener and customize it. You can just put your name after it. It's just easier for kids to type in. So has nothing to do with Google Hangouts, just a tool that I find very helpful. So all of my resources are at bit.ly/UNL-TechEdge. I want to take the last couple minutes here to have you sign in, look at some troubleshooting things you might be having, and answer any questions you might have for me. And if any of you are in a situation and you want to do a practice Google Hangout with a classroom, it doesn't have to be a mystery hangout or anything. I'm happy to set you up with connecting with a 2nd grade, 3rd grade, any kind of class to have students collaborate with you. I've got lots of teachers that are willing to do those things. Yep, H. Callihan at GI Northwest. Yep. H. Callihan at GI Northwest. Yep. .org. And I know it works because they did it right before we started. Actually, it was done twice. The first session and the second session. Any questions? You're welcome. I think that's it for today. There's no.
Did you join me?
Yeah, what?
It's in here.
The what?
Oh, there you are. Did you start a conversation?
I want to go to the bookstore.
Oh, you said that.
Down here or in the other one?
Down here.
Down here.
Well, there's
Are
good
you
stuff. Are you gonna call me or something?
How long might be less?
I said, while I'm here, I may as well.
People you may know.
The books.
It's not like I agree to friends and that sort of
That's
thing.
how. The first time I went to the email,
So me.
I'm coming back for the volleyball game Wednesday, so I thought, I'll just go to the bookstore and buy a shirt. Why not?
Like Northwest.
Yes, yep. I'm actually from Grand Island. I was away for a while. I went to school at Wesleyan, and then I taught in Bellevue for 6 years before I moved back. Yeah, okay, we're trying to, are you familiar with Northwest?
My future in-laws.
Really?
I live in like Northwest.
Okay. Awesome. Like on what street?
It'll not break dry.
Okay.
Sure you got.
No, it's
not my
God.
It's just because I thought the
Ash.
well, why not?
How do you
And I'm off of North Road, which is right.
We're trying to do this, but it says I'm like not on air.
Yeah, I'm not mine on it. It says it's some sort of.
Okay, so go like create one that's not on air, just do this right here.
Oh, there you are. Got your message.
Okay, so then you can accept.
Oh, that's for calling me?
Right where I just So that's just a bit, on the one on the right, with the toolbar, the Hangout thing on the right, is just kind of the basic just to connect. The Hangouts on air is more to broadcast things and make it live, and I record it for later. I would say 80% of the time I just use the basic. I'll use it when I want to record. It just depends on the tone. So if I wanted to teach a course, I'll make it.
Oh, wait.
Which one you aren't using?
Yeah.
Links to share, you know, links to share.
So can you see me?
It says we're calling you. Invite me.
I'm calling you right now.
Okay, so let's hang on.
Which one you use all online? Oh, was I joining?
Now you're joining. Okay, hold on.
Hey. Something else, second grade.
I love just doing simple things like story retell, what have you been doing in your classroom, what stories are you reading, just that basic talk, conversating back and
Okay,
forth.
it's more.
I'm the first one here. Is that what it said for you?
This is like Jordan isn't very well. You try calling me.
It's rude. I'm available.
So, I'm gonna go home here, go back home. Okay, so if we do Hangout, and we do a new Hangout. Is it Emily?
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll do this, it says she's on. And let's do a video call. And then she.
You're calling me.
And yes, that works.
So you can no longer call me.
Hi. Okay. Okay, now how did you do that?
She went to that little like side thing.
What'd you push?
Okay,
Push
so
this one right here.
we just added it on the, so we're not in Hangouts on the left-hand side, we're at home.
Oh, right. I was in Hangout.
Yeah, because those are the Hangouts on air. You can do it either way, but just to invite her for just a quick hangout.
So,
I did new Hangout and then type her name.
Okay.
Sorry.
Jordan, that's okay. Nope. Well, she was in my circle, I thought, but.
Yeah, so when you add people, like, it gives you those check boxes. If I just check friends, is that not a circle? That's just like.
It'll send everybody's invitation.
Well, Emily's the only one of my friends, right? I have. Well, I guess Kelsey just got added.
And then you clicked on this thing?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Now, how do I see my circles?
So then you go back. So you have this right now, you're doing all. This would be your friends, and if you have more, you're following. So you have friends here.
Oh, she's not in there.
Yeah, I thought. Oh wait, yeah, I have you and Kelsey.
Well, that's have you been circles, so you can go into your circles here.
And she's, oh, and she's, yeah, you're in. We'll have to hang out today.
And to figure this out before we start.
That's what you practice. It works. Thank you guys. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. I swear this was.
Okay, so I learned something today. You can do a hangout with a hangout via Incognito window. That's fantastic.
I'm so glad that worked. That was really cool.
Thank you for your support and help with that. That's a great idea.
I think I just did stop the podcast.